Hello my friends, and welcome to the channel for another Escape from Tarkov video. Today I've got a refresher course for the new Tarkov players and anyone who's coming back from a big break on some weapons that you can set up using level 2 traders once you have them all unlocked. Some of the old reliable mid-game builds are still going strong here in the 1.0 release, but we also have a few new toys to play with to make things interesting. The real limiting factor at this level, as usual in Tarkov, is your access to ammo for some of these setups, especially 5.56 and 5.45 rifle rounds. There isn't much worth buying from the traders, but thankfully it seems the ammo spawns in raid are cranked up to 11 right now. So you shouldn't have too much trouble getting decent ammo for these setups as long as you keep your eyes peeled for the cardboard ammo boxes out there in your raids. So to start this video off, I want to take a look at an M16A1 build that you can set up once you have level 2 Peacekeeper unlocked. The M16's prices were reduced right before I started making this video to about 500 USD. And with a little gunsmithing, you can take an M16A1 and build it out to basically be equivalent to a long-barreled M4 build. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you might remember that I would always recommend taking an ADAR and converting it to full auto at this level. But now we can basically just skip that step and use the M16A1 from Peacekeeper instead. This build controls pretty well in full auto, but it doesn't have the highest ergonomic stats, especially with a suppressor. That being said, I still think it's a pretty solid build, and it doesn't cost too much to set up. So first you want to buy yourself an M16 from Peacekeeper. This build will work on either the M16A1 or A2. The main difference is that the M16A1 has full auto, where the A2 only has burst fire. The A2 has slightly better recoil stats, but really the main difference is that if you want full auto, you need to use the A1. The first big change is to swap out the default receiver with the carry handle on it for the ADAR receiver from Skier level 2, which has a flat top rail for adding sights. Next, swap out the front sight gas block for the MK12 low profile gas block for a better sight picture. You can also add the KAC QD flash suppressor kit as a new muzzle device. This should get you a small recoil buff, and if you can find yourself an NT4 suppressor, you can also attach that to this muzzle device, but you can't buy it on the flea market until level 25. At level 2 Peacekeeper, you can buy the M5 RAS handguard for the M16, which gets you a small stat bonus, and also adds rails to the handguard for other attachments. For my build, I'm running the X400 flashlight and laser, and the BGV QD foregrip for a recoil bonus. Next up, you can swap the M16 buffer tube and stock for the RTM ATP buffer tube and the Chris DS150 stock, which has much better overall stats compared to the basic M16 stock and buffer tube. When that's all together, the last thing you need is a sight. You can run this with just a red dot sight to keep it simple, or if you can find a crowbar on a scav or something, you can trade that at Peacekeeper level 2 for an Elcan Spectre 1-4 scope that I find works quite well on this build. The modding for the M16 really gets fun at level 3 Peacekeeper with the MK12 parts, but I think this setup is pretty solid for level 2 traders, especially after the price reduction. Next up, we have another newer piece of gear on level 2 traders with the VSK-94 suppressed 9x39 rifle. This gun comes right from proper level 2 complete with a suppressor, and we have a new handguard with the 1.0 release that actually lets us add a foregrip and flashlight onto the VSK as well. So the build has got a pretty solid improvement in this latest patch. If you like to run SMGs and prefer fighting at a bit closer range, this setup will probably vibe with you quite well. And it's also one of the few rifle caliber weapons that you can easily get a suppressor for at this level, so that right there is a pretty solid advantage all by itself. The big weakness of this rifle is that it has extremely low muzzle velocity, making it very awkward to shoot at medium range. But if you keep that in mind and use it more like a hard-hitting SMG, it's a very solid build. The setup for this is very simple as well. After you buy a VSK, the first modification we will make is to add the new TTS-9A handguard onto the build. This has a rail on the bottom for a foregrip, and then you can add one of the TTS 2.5-inch rails for a flashlight. I'm using the BGV QD foregrip and the X400 flashlight laser combo on this setup. Next, you can add the Zenit B13V dovetail rail onto the dovetail mount on the side of the VSK-94. This gives you a top rail that can take most scopes in the game, and for my setup, I like to run this build with the Delta Point reflex sight because it's my favorite close range sight in the game. But you can also use most other red dots or even something like the compact 2x scope as well. And that's basically it. This is a very simple build, and you can buy SP5 ammo for pretty cheap from proper level 2 to feed this thing. It's not the greatest ammo in the game, but it should make quick work of any scavs and do pretty well against most class 4 armor that players are wearing right now. Up next for this video, let's do a quick refresher course on the classic level 2 traders budget AK build. This build has not really changed in the 1.0 patch, but for good reason. It's a certified classic. You can basically get a stat upgrade into every slot on the AK rifles using level 2 traders, and as long as you can find ammo to keep these guns running, they are truly the workhorse weapons of the Tarkov mid-game. This build can support any scopes that you find out in Tarkov, it'll work at basically any range, and you can make this build fit onto any AK-74, AKM, or AK-100 rifle, so it's incredibly versatile. For this build, I'll be making it on an AK-74N, which you can buy from Proper, and the only things that might be different on other AK rifles is the type of PT stock adapter you need to use, and on AKM rifles specifically, you'll need the TT AKM muzzle adapter to fit the compensator. First up, you can add the Zenit DTK1 compensator right onto any of the AK100 or AK74 rifles, but for the AKM, you will need to use the TT AKM muzzle adapter like I just mentioned. Next, slap on the CAA RS47 AK handguard for some rails and a nice stat upgrade, and then you can add the Zenit RK4 grip and the X400 flashlight laser combo. For the dust cover, first remove the rear sight, and then you can add the Bastion dust cover for a sight mount. Next, you can swap out the stock for one of the PT lock adapters, whichever one fits on the rifle you're building, and then you can add the Zenit PT1 Classica stock for a big stat upgrade over the basic stock. If you have completed Gunsmith Part 6, you can also add on the GP25 rubber butt pad for another pretty solid recoil buff. Finally, for the pistol grip, you can either leave on the default grip, or for a nice ergonomics bonus, you can swap it out for the Tapco saw style grip from Mechanic Level 2. For the sight on your build, you can keep it simple and just use a red dot sight, or you can trade a crowbar for the Elcan Spectre scope like I mentioned earlier. But you can also buy the old style ACOG scope from Peacekeeper Level 2 and mount it using the compact sight mount, and then you can buy the MPR-45 angled mount and use that to stick a backup red dot sight on the handguard as well, so you have a magnified scope and a close range scope. Whichever AK you decide to use this build on, you should notice a big improvement over the basic build. And this is one of my favorite mid-game questing loadouts in Tarkov. I use it a lot. Next, let's take a quick look at some of my favorite SMG builds at level 2 traders, starting with my favorite SMG in Tarkov, the MP9. This little bullet hose is easily my favorite weapon to bring when I'm just doing loot runs. It's very compact and very light, so it's both great for fighting over loot hotspots in buildings, and it allows you to make a lightweight loadout so you can pick up extra loot without being weighed down. At level 2 traders, you can get PST GZH ammo, which is reasonably effective against armor, and you can set this thing up with a suppressor and 30 round mags for a pretty solid price. There are two versions of the MP9, the regular MP9 and the MP9N, which has a much higher fire rate, and for that reason, it's the one I prefer. You can buy the MP9N on the flea market for about 35,000 rubles, or the basic MP9 from Peacekeeper for about 275 USD. First up, you can buy the MP9 suppressor mount and the MP9 suppressor from Mechanic Level 2, and these work on both MP9 variants. Next, you can add a flashlight right onto the suppressor mount, and for the regular MP9, you'll want to add an RK4 grip as well, since it doesn't come with a foregrip by default. For my red dot sight of choice on this build, I love the Delta Point reflex sight, but if you don't like the triangle reticle, you can just use the MRS reflex sight instead. And that's the whole build. It's a very simple weapon to set up, and this little SMG will really hold its own during close range fights. Just be careful with your trigger finger on the MP9N because it's very easy to run your entire mag dry if you panic spray. Next up, we have the classic mid-game suppressed UMP-45 build. This thing continues to be one of the best weapons available from level 2 traders, giving you a simple, hard-hitting, easy-to-control SMG that makes up for kinda low armor pen with high armor damage, allowing you to still break through armor with repeated shots. The UMP has basically been one of the best early to mid-game SMGs in Tarkov since it was added to the game, and it still feels awesome here in 1.0. For this build, the biggest upgrade you can get is the OEM UMP suppressor from Peacekeeper Level 2. This gives you a solid recoil buff and keeps your shots quiet so you don't draw aggro from across the map. After adding the suppressor, you can also stick on a foregrip and a light or laser onto the handguard rails, and the UMP comes with sight rails by default as well, so you can add whatever red dot sight you prefer. If you're more partial to the 9mm builds, you can also get a suppressor for the PP19 at level 2 mechanic. First, you can add the SAG M-Lock handguard gas tube combo, which replaces the gas tube and the handguard on the PP19. Then you can add the Daniel Defense M-Lock foregrip and a flashlight or laser with an M-Lock rail. After that, add the Vitiaz rail dust cover and a red dot sight, whichever one you prefer. You can also add on the PT1 Classica stock for the PP19, but personally, I don't think it helps that much, and it ends up just making the build cost more money. Finally, we come to the last build in this video, the Marlin MXLR lever action rifle. This gun is proving to be kind of a menace, giving players access to a powerful rifle round with a pretty solid fire rate and great accuracy for a cheap price. As of making this video though, the price of the Marlin has pretty much doubled, and the powerful ME ammo type has been moved up to level 3 traders instead of level 2, but you can still buy the LOKT ammo for this thing at level 2 traders. Without the better ammo, this thing isn't as broken as it was before, but it's still probably the best weapon in the game to run the early Tarkov shooter quests. You can keep this very simple and run this thing just with iron sights as God intended, but if you wanted to be tactical, you can add the ELG M-Lock handguard and then add the Daniel Defense M-Lock foregrip. Then you can also use a 2.5-inch M-Lock rail to add a light or laser onto this thing as well. Next, you can add the Rhino sight rail on top of this rifle, and then with this you can add a red dot sight for close range stuff, or if you can get your hands on an Elcan Spectre scope or any other scope that you like, you should be able to add that as well. Personally, I still like kitting up with full auto guns, but for those Tarkov shooter quests, this is probably the best setup you can build to make them less annoying to complete, and if you're really good at hitting those headshots, this thing can kind of just be a menace against geared players. And that covers it for the builds in this video. It's not all of the builds you can make at level 2 traders, but these are some of the setups I feel are the most effective and the best use of your money in the early to mid game. I'll be working on my level 3 trader builds as soon as I get them unlocked, but for now, let me know what builds you've been running so far in the 1.0 patch. Did I miss anything really solid at the level 2 traders? If I did, let me know in the comments. Thanks for checking out the video. I've got a link to my Twitch stream in the description if you want to come check out some Tarkov gameplay live. And until next time, stay safe in Tarkov City, everyone.